On December 5, 1872, a ship was found drifting alone in the vast, empty expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. There was no distress signal, no bodies, no signs of violence, just an eerie, profound silence. A perfectly good vessel, completely abandoned. 10 people had vanished without a trace, leaving behind one of the greatest maritime mysteries of all time. What you're about to hear is the true story of the Mary Celeste, a ghost ship that has puzzled historians, sailors, and investigators for over 150 years. This wasn't just any old ship. The Mary Celeste was a proud American merchant brigantine. It was sturdy, well-equipped, and captained by a man named Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Captain Briggs was no amateur. He was a highly respected, experienced seaman, known for his competence and his calm demeanor. He wasn't alone on this journey. Accompanying him were his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. They were joined by a hand-picked crew of 7 skilled sailors. This wasn't a reckless voyage. It was a routine trip for a seasoned captain and a reliable crew. Their mission was straightforward: sail from New York to Genoa, Italy, delivering a cargo of over 1,700 barrels of raw industrial alcohol. The ship was loaded, the crew was ready, and the journey ahead seemed promising. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste set sail from New York Harbor. The early days of the voyage appeared to be completely uneventful. According to the ship's logbook, which was later recovered, the weather was fair and the journey was progressing smoothly. The final entry in that log was dated November 25th, 9 days before the ship was discovered. It placed the Mary Celeste near the Azores Islands, just off the coast of Portugal. There was absolutely nothing in the captain's notes to suggest any trouble. No mention of storms, no hint of discord among the crew, and certainly no indication of any impending disaster. The last words written simply noted their position, and then nothing. The ship's story, as told by its captain, just stops. For the next 10 days, the Mary Celeste sailed on, a silent vessel with no one at the helm. Almost 400 miles from where its last log entry was made, another ship. The Canadian brigantine Dei Gratia spotted something strange on the horizon. It was a ship, sails partially set, but tattered, drifting erratically. It wasn't responding to signals. As the Dei Gratia drew closer, her captain, David Morehouse, was shocked to realize he recognized the vessel. It was the Mary Celeste. He actually knew Captain Briggs personally and knew him to be a capable sailor. To see his ship in this state, adrift and seemingly uncontrolled, was deeply alarming. Something was terribly wrong. After hailing the ship multiple times and getting no response, Captain Morehouse sent his first mate and a small boarding party over in a lifeboat to investigate. As they climbed aboard the Mary Celeste, an unsettling quiet greeted them. The deck was empty. The wheel spun freely. The wind whistled through the rigging. And the only other sound was the groan of the timbers and the gentle slap of waves against the hull. It was as if the ship's entire crew had simply vanished into thin air. The boarding party cautiously began to explore the silent ship, and what they found only deepened the mystery. Down in the galley, there was plenty of food and fresh water enough to last for months. In the crew's quarters, their personal belongings, including their money and even their tobacco pipes, were left untouched, as if they were expected to return at any moment. Even the captain's wife's sewing machine had a piece of fabric still in it, mid-stitch. The cargo hold was mostly undisturbed. The 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol were all there, except for 9 that were found empty. Critically, the ship itself was in excellent condition. It was completely seaworthy. There was no damage from a storm, no signs of a fire, and no evidence of a struggle or any kind of violence. There wasn't a single drop of blood to be found anywhere. But 2 things were missing. The ship's only lifeboat was gone. And so were the captain's navigational instruments, including his chronometer and sextant. It was clear the crew had abandoned ship. But why? Why would an experienced captain like Benjamin Briggs, with his wife and child on board, order everyone to abandon a perfectly good ship in the middle of the unforgiving Atlantic Ocean? So, we left off with the Mary Celeste, a ghost ship found drifting in the Atlantic, perfectly intact, but with its entire crew vanished. The mystery only deepens from here. Over the last century and a half, countless theories have tried to explain what happened, but none have ever been definitively proven. Let's dive into the most compelling and sometimes confusing ideas about the fate of the 10 souls aboard. One of the first theories that came up was piracy or mutiny. Now, this sounds dramatic, and back in the 1870s, it wasn't unheard of. The idea is that pirates boarded the ship, took what they wanted, and got rid of the crew. Or perhaps the crew themselves mutinied against Captain Briggs. Makes for a thrilling story, but the evidence just doesn't support it. For starters, nothing of value was missing. The cargo of industrial alcohol, worth a small fortune, was completely untouched. The crew's personal belongings, including their money and valuables, were still in their quarters. More importantly, there were no signs of a struggle. No bloodstains, no broken furniture, no evidence of violence whatsoever. And here, the biggest question. Why would Captain Briggs bring his wife and 2-year-old daughter along if he was planning something shady, or if he feared his own crew? It just doesn't add up. So while it's a popular idea in fiction, the mutiny or piracy theory is pretty much unverified. All right, let's move on to the most famous and widely debated theory, the exploding alcohol fumes. The Mary Celeste was carrying 1701 barrels of denatured alcohol. The theory goes that some of these barrels started to leak. As the potent alcohol vapor filled the cargo hold, the crew began to panic. They feared a massive explosion was imminent. In a frantic rush, they decided to evacuate temporarily. They would have lowered the lifeboat, attached it to the ship with a long tow rope, and waited at a safe distance for the danger to pass. But then, disaster struck. A sudden storm or a rogue wave could have snapped the rope, leaving them adrift in the vast ocean, while the Mary Celeste sailed on without them. This theory explains why they would leave in such a hurry and why they took the chronometer and navigational documents. The major problem with this idea? There was no explosion. When the Dei Gratia crew boarded the ship, they found the barrels mostly secure. While some were empty, this was likely due to normal leakage, not a catastrophic event. The ship was in perfect condition. Why would they abandon a perfectly sound vessel for a tiny lifeboat based on a fear that never came true? It's a compelling, but ultimately flawed explanation. So, if it wasn't pirates, and probably wasn't a phantom explosion, what else could it be? Many maritime historians lean towards a much simpler, more plausible explanation. It all comes down to a potential navigational error and a faulty piece of equipment. Here's the idea. Captain Briggs might have believed the ship was taking on water and sinking, much faster than it actually was. Why would he think that? The ship's chronometer was found to be inaccurate, and one of the 2 pumps used to measure water in the hull was disassembled on the deck. It's possible that due to a combination of a recent storm, the faulty pump, and inaccurate readings, Captain Briggs made a terrible miscalculation. He believed his ship was doomed. Fearing they were about to sink, he ordered everyone into the lifeboat as a precaution, tying it to the Mary Celeste to be towed until they could assess the situation. This explains why they took the navigational tools they planned to return. But just like in the alcohol theory, a sudden change in weather or a strong current could have snapped the tow rope. The crew in their small, vulnerable lifeboat would have been left at the mercy of the Atlantic, while the sturdy Mary Celeste sailed on, empty. This theory neatly explains why the ship was intact, why the lifeboat was missing, and why there were no signs of violence. It paints a picture not of foul play, but of a tragic mistake made by a competent captain under immense pressure. It's plausible, but like all the others, it remains unproven. So why, after all this time, has the case of the Mary Celeste never been solved? The biggest reason is the complete lack of physical evidence. 10 people who vanished were never seen again. No bodies were ever recovered from the ocean. The lifeboat itself was never found. They left behind no final note, no distress call, no clue in the ship's log to tell us what happened in those final moments. The investigation at the time was also incomplete by modern standards, clouded by suspicions of insurance fraud and foul play that led nowhere. Ultimately, the ocean itself is the biggest obstacle. It's a vast and unforgiving place, capable of erasing all traces of a tragedy in a matter of hours. The clues, if there ever were any, were swallowed by the waves long ago, leaving us with nothing but a ship full of unanswered questions. The Mary Celeste itself was repaired and sailed for another 12 years under different owners. It's almost as if cursed, before its final captain intentionally wrecked it in an insurance scam. But the ship's haunted legacy was already cemented, not by what it did, but by what it held: the silent, enduring mystery of its vanished crew. The story of those 10 souls has become a permanent part of maritime lore, a chilling reminder of how quickly people can disappear without a trace. What do you think really happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste? Was it a calculated mutiny, a panicked evacuation, or a simple, tragic mistake? Let me know your theory in the comments below. And if you love diving into real-life mysteries like this one, make sure to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.